The paranormal doesn't exist and it can't hurt you, right? Wrong. According to these laws, you have rights against the paranormal, and they against you. Today we'll be looking at some of these laws so that you can be prepared for the unknown from the unknown. Let's first start off with the big guy himself, Bigfoot. In 1969 Skamania County, Washington, it had been deemed illegal to hunt down Bigfoot. Doing so would be punishable by a $1,000 fine and up to even a year in jail. Not to mention you'd be known as the jerk that killed Bigfoot. This law was brought due to an increased number of Sasquatch sightings throughout the state. Additionally, in 1984, an ordinance was amended which put the big man back on the endangered species list. However, our southern state Texas doesn't share such kindness towards the lovely cryptid. There are no laws in place for Bigfoot, which has actually caused people to interpret it as an open season on our boy. Something I noticed while researching this though is that there is actually a surprising amount of legal stuff pertaining to Bigfoot, which is kind of surprising considering, we totally think he's fake and all, right? In summary, don't hunt, hurt, or kill Bigfoot and you won't be on the endangered species list. Anyways, moving on. If you or a loved one decides to, randomly pick up necromancy, you might want to double check your state's laws pertaining to this. In order to legally communicate beyond the grave through the reanimation of dead flesh in San Francisco, California, you must first obtain a fortune-telling permit via the police department. So before you go talking to Meemaw from beyond the grave, ensure that you have a great lawyer or plausible deniability.
I want the telephone for the pancake pie!
However, if you're in New Orleans, you might want to hide that fortune-telling permit because they have a paragraph to say about it. It shall be unlawful for any person to advertise or engage in, for a moneyed consideration, the business of chronology, phrenology, astrology, palmistry, telling or pretending to tell fortunes, either with cards, hands, patterns, letters, or other devices or methods. But hey, maybe in your case they might be too busy dealing with all the cases of ghosts not paying their taxi fares. It has been reported that after the case of a large natural disaster such as a hurricane, taxi drivers have an increased amount of ghostwriters. Reported both here in the US and Japan, ghosts have been said to have conversations with these drivers, and through those conversations discovered that they might not actually be alive anymore. As the cars stop, the drivers turn around to collect their fare only to see nothing but empty seats behind them. Moving on with more information regarding our incorporeal friends, did you know that before you move into your very expensive house, you, the buyer, have the right to know whether or not the house has been or is currently haunted? These states include Minnesota, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and New York.
New York City.
This was due to the court case Strombotsky versus Ackley in 1991. A woman known as Helen Ackley in New York reported multiple poltergeists in her house, such as disappearing toys and a ghost shaking a child's bed. Understandably, she contacted her real estate broker to sell the house, but on one condition, that the future buyer know that it was haunted. Until then, she would refuse to sign her end of the contract. Future buyer, Jeffrey Strombotsky, was then informed of this to only retort, "We'll have to call in the Ghostbusters." Upon hearing that he was informed, Helen immediately signed her end of the contract. Out of curiosity, Jeffrey decided to call an in-person meeting just to ask about the history of the house and why she thought it was haunted. This is when Helen decided to lay the entire story on him. After hearing this, Jeffrey filed for a rescission of the sale and took Helen to court for fraudulent misrepresentation. Helen, of course, won the case because she had in fact disclosed its haunting. Although due to this case, it was shown that houses that were considered haunted were considerably cheaper. Thus, the ruling was made that sellers must in fact disclose if the house is haunted. In a similar yet weaker case in 1971, Pennsylvania, a 22-year-old inmate known as Gerald Mayo decided to sue Satan himself. He was then promptly sucked into a random sinkhole never to be seen again. I'm just kidding, no, he's fine. Mr. Mayo had claimed that Satan himself had deliberately placed obstacles in his path to strip him of his constitutional rights. Of course, this case didn't even get off the ground, although it was strangely decided that Satan would be considered a foreign prince. So, that's cool, I guess. But on the topic of foreign princes, for our final three, we are going to be going over paranormal laws put in place by other countries that protect the inhuman and human alike. In Iceland, there is a conservation act that states if a location has been associated with paranormal activity for the last 100 years, it is legally protected. This mostly pertains to the large rocks and boulders that are said to house elves in Iceland. This has led to instances of delaying highway construction projects to allow the elves to properly move out, and even complete relocation of a 70-ton stone. The Icelandic Road and Coastal Administration negotiated with the local elves to relocate rather than destroy their home. In another instance, they simply built the highway around the stone. But let's say your issues revolve around something more reincarnation related rather than elves. Make sure that if you're planning to reincarnate in China, that you first get it recognized by their government, because it could be considered not only invalid, but even illegal. On August 2007, China's State Administration for Religious Affairs declared that it is an important move to institutionalize management on reincarnation of living Buddhas. I'm not entirely sure how you're supposed to abide to this law, but it is the law, so it legally must be done. And finally, last but certainly not least, a family in Saudi Arabia had attempted to sue a jinn or a genie for harassment. The results of this charge brought against the genie are unknown. However, it was reported that the genie not only threw rocks at them, but also left angry voicemails on their phone after stealing them. It is unsure how the genie will be brought to justice. However, I just hope that the authorities have a lamp on them, just in case the situation escalates. This concludes today's informational legal advice video on the paranormal. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this as much as I enjoyed making it. And don't forget to subscribe for more spooky content like this. And I don't know, why don't you leave a like, because maybe you liked the video. But anyways, as always everybody, stay spooky. Bye-bye. Alright, that's a wrap. Let's turn it, let's get this down.